o'clock. I'm calling the meeting, the Winona County Planning Commission meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, in front of you should be the amended agenda with a couple extra things added to the first petition. Like a motion to approve the agenda?
Moved. Second.
Louis
Patrick.
and Patrick. Made the motion and second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, agenda approved. Minutes. Everyone have time to read the minutes? Gordon makes a motion to approve.
Second.
I can't see it. That's the problem with the mask.
Oh.
Kelly seconded it. To accept the minutes from the October 21st meeting. Any discussion? If none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, passed. Petitions, docket, PC 11/18/21/01. Jeffrey and Amanda Evanson regarding the following interim or conditional use permit request. And I believe Megan is in charge here.
Hey, good evening, Chair. And everyone. I'll just await the shared screen. While we're waiting for that screen to come up, I did look through the staff report and I wanted to point out.
I think you have to use sign language.
Can you hear me okay?
No, can't hear you.
Maybe because you're outside.
Yeah, but
Good,
you're
Kelly.
hear
Good.
us.
on
Good.
the edge of the bluff there. So it's all over.
She's in a different time zone too.
All right, are you guys able to hear me now? Can you hear me at all? No.
Let's see, she's not muted. You figuring it out yet? Or?
Yep.
It's a cool background though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome to Ring Central Meeting. Enter your meeting ID.
Here now. We can hear you.
Megan, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Close. Whatever we did. Okay.
So can you hear me on the,
I can hear you without the phone.
without the phone? Okay, excellent. That's much easier. All right, good deal. Thank you. Okay, Kay, are you pulling up the PowerPoint? While we're waiting for that PowerPoint to start up, if you guys hear me okay now?
Yes.
Great. I did wanted to point out two areas. Of course, I'm looking through my staff report as we're awaiting the meeting. And the acreage is 0.8 acres, not 0.08 acres. And the request is pursuant to 10.4.6, temporary small business. In the staff report, it's referring to a shoreland ordinance. I think that was left over from another report. So I wanted to point that out while we're waiting here. Okay, are you able to pull that up or would you like me to?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Can you hear me?
It does.
Ken.
Ring Central is spooling on the laptop, so Stephanie's gonna pull it up and see if she can share screen instead. So just give us 1 minute.
Like it's got 0.19 kilobytes.
Put the blow down and lift it up at the same.
Not even a big enough for her bearing.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. So we are looking at a petition 11/8/2101 for Jeffrey and Amanda Evenson. This is a petition for a conditional use / interim use permit. We are reviewing this for an interim use permit due to the nature of the request. This would be considered a temporary small business pursuant to 9.13, and it is located in the Ag Resource District. And like I had said before, that's a 0.8 acre parcel, just under 1 acre. In the report, it said 0.08. Next slide. So Jeffrey and Amanda Evenson would like to have an auto repair business at their location at 36764 Cedar Ridge Drive. You can see that this is located just southeast of Winona, north of I-90 in Ag Natural Resource area of Homer Township. Next slide. From the sky, we can see the parcel highlighted in green. It currently has a building on it that Amanda and Jeffrey would like to use for their shop. The parcel is located just north of their residence, which is on a different parcel. You can see that in the aerial photo. The driveway, which accesses the site, is actually the boundary line between Homer Township to the north and Pleasant Hill, sorry, another typo, Township to the south. Next slide. The site plan shows what they would like to do with the site. The sketch below was submitted in the application. You can see the location of the shop there is a storage trailer there off to the east. Parking would be right next to that storage trailer and contained completely within their parcel. Although their family does own property completely around this parcel, they plan on keeping the cars waiting to be serviced or picked up all on their property. Excuse me. To the north of the shop building, there is a storage trailer for tires, and this is where they're also going to have all of their oil and coolant storage located in the back there. Next slide. As you drive down their driveway, you can see the proposed business building off to the right, which is accessed from Cedar Ridge Drive. And again, Pleasant Hill Township to the left and Homer Township to the right. They just want to use the existing structure, and at this time they have no proposed additional structures. Next slide. Here on site, you can see the proposed parking area, which is actually where that John Deere is sitting right there. Jeffrey is motivated to keep the site clean because this does drift. And so he would like to have around 5 cars, no more, but with the current state of access to parts and delays in shipping, we thought it would be good to allow up to 10, either awaiting service or retrieval in that location. Next slide. Here in the north of the shop, you can see there's another access door. The blue arrow on the slide points to the covered storage trailer, which is currently containing tires in there. This is how they would mitigate water retention in tires that are waiting to be disposed. Back here is also where they identified the area to store oil and coolant to be disposed of. And storage of that we've asked that one of the conditions of this interim permit is that they work with our hazmat folks to make sure those hazardous materials are being stored properly and disposed of properly. Next slide. All right, here's to the front of the shop, which is the south side. Just a single garage door, a single person door on this side. There is no existing water fixtures or floor drains, nor are there any proposed. Next slide. One thing to note on site, this is a Black Hammer Southridge complex. It's well-drained silt over clay. Depth is over 80 inches. It is considered, part of this parcel is considered prime farmland and also farmland of statewide importance. However, it's currently a building site and no ag land would be taken out of production for this use. The Winona County Geologic Atlas has indicated a moderate to high sinkhole probability. And this is probably my greatest concern for the site and highlights the how crucial it is that the proper storage and disposal of chemicals on site is done properly so that we're protecting groundwater due to that karst feature. Next. So this highlights the known sinkholes near the Evenson property. I don't know if you can see the red dots, but they definitely are within, I think that's a 3/4 of a mile is the closest one, probably even closer to that. And so there are known sinkholes in the area. There are likely other ones out there that are unknown. And if you go to the next slide, you can see the how the karst features cover the entire area. So the potential for sinkholes is significant, a significant concern to consider. Next slide. Homer Township met in November and they have indicated they're in support of the request. Slide. So staff recommendation would be consider all the materials and testimony and that this is reviewed as an interim use permit and reviewed every 5 years according to 9.13. This is based on all the information we had that was presented. And should you consider approving this petition, there are 9 conditions for consideration that we'd recommend. Are there any questions?
Anybody have any questions for me?
Yeah. So with the interim review every 5 years, does that mean that is the permit only good for 5 years, or how's that? And is this something that they would someday consider wanting to sell? And as an interim, I would assume they could not sell it as a business, correct?
They could sell the business. The new business owners, I believe, would just apply for their own interim use permit.
So explain the 5-year review to me.
In 9.13 temporary small business, there's 1 through 4 standards that they need to meet. It's employment. The owner must reside on the property and be employed. And the owner of the business and the owner of the property must be the same individual. And the last one is that it needs to be, or actually it says may be reviewed every 5 years. And in this case, I'd recommend that so that if there are any storage issues that we would need to address, that comes up as a regular conversation every 5 years.
All righty, hearing none, is the petitioner here? Would the petitioner like to stand up and say a few words or tell us all about it? You bet. You have to list your name and address and.
So I'm Amanda Evenson, Jeff's wife. We are the owners of 3674 Cedar Ridge Drive, where we'd like to open the business up. As far, I guess the biggest thing I want to say with the hazardous material, that is very important to me as well. I think we have our bases covered. We've contacted Safety Clean, other containment facilities on the proper way to contain the hazardous materials. I'm also an instructor at Southeast College for the automotive program, and I'm in charge of making sure everything is safely handled there as well. If I don't have a job. So it's something I've dealt with a lot. Both Jeff and I have dealt with it quite a bit. We've been in industry for a long time and seen good and bad shops. We prefer the good ones, and we do care for the environment. So again, I understand, we both understand how important that is. So.
Well, it's your water that's going to contaminate.
Right.
Your well's the closest one to it, so.
Yeah. So, but yeah, other than that, thanks for having us, and hopefully can go forward.
Anyone have any questions? Steve?
How long do you see yourself doing this business?
Long time. We do not plan on selling the property. We intend to stay there the rest of our lives. Everything we plan or do there is oriented around staying there, and raising our family there. We plan to continue to have the business as long as it's feasible for us and our family. Obviously, if we can't make ends meet with it, we got to make other decisions. But that's our hopes right now. So just to stay in business, it goes well.
Your plan is just to stay like a small, you're not gonna have employees or just pretty much?
Yeah, I
just him
don't
and-
foresee employees. We don't plan on
Well,
expanding.
it would require more building space.
Correct.
everything
It's
else.
not really an interest. I don't think either one of us want the headache of it. We'd rather be our own bosses and handle our own situations and not have others involved, I guess, for the most part. So.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're looking for a motion to open a public hearing.
So moved.
Kelly
Second.
made the motion to open the public hearing and
Second.
Patrick seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The public hearing is now open. Okay, if anyone wishes to speak for or against a petition, please step forward, state your name and address and what you'd like to say. Now, who's all on the interweb there? Anybody out there? How's Colorado, Megan?
Hey, this is Prairie Mound, or Mound Prairie, outside of Houston.
Is anybody online anywhere?
Mr. Chair, it does not appear that there is anyone else that might be thought to be wanting to speak.
Okay.
One chat on the chat box, is that anything that?
I'll check it.
Okay, if not, not the second time. If anyone wishes to speak for or against this petition, now's the time to do it. Please step forward, state your name, address, and what you'd like to say. Can you get to that chat, or is that not important?
That was Ann Schwertle wondering why my computer is still saying it's connecting to audio. And this computer's melting down tonight when it worked perfectly at the Board of Adjustment, so I apologize. But all is well.
Mr. Chair, the chat indicator that you see on that screen,
Yep.
it would have been Megan's note that she would be calling in.
Okay.
because it's attached to that computer there that
Okay.
nobody's touching.
All righty, the third and final time, is anyone here would like to speak for or against the petition? Please step forward or make some noise on the phone or your web or wherever you are. If not,
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
there's a motion by Mike and a second by Louis to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed? Public hearing is now closed. Okay, folks, what do you wish?
I will make a motion that we recommend this interim permit for approval, adopting the staff's conditions and findings.
Kelly made the motion and Jordan seconded it. Any discussion? Steve?
So I guess my question is for staff. An interim use permit is supposed to have a known ending, correct? So are we telling I mean, to me, it seems like it should be a conditional use permit. They should be afforded the right when they pay their fee to have this into perpetuity and to sell and to do whatever they want with. And the interim, it also, I've had this discussion time and time again. It feels like the applicant should be able to say whether they want a conditional use permit or whether they want an interim use permit. And staff has just said, you're gonna issue an interim use permit. And we don't know an end date, and that seems to be a requirement for an interim use permit, is that there's a known end date.
So the. All right, there you go. The recommendation of staff is for it to be issued as an interim use permit. Just like every other petition and findings that you see here, you can always change that if you don't believe that that criteria is met. The basis for the recommendation is that an interim use permit terminates on an identifiable date or event. And the recommendation in this particular case is that if the business is sold, then at that point, the interim use permit would terminate. That's an event upon which termination can occur. That's staff recommendation. We can change that if you disagree with it, and if you make the finding that there's no identifiable date or event for termination, but you have the recommendation of staff.
I guess I don't know really the intent of the applicant. If I was building a gas station or whatever business that I was intending to build, I would want the assurance that I'm doing it, it's stayed with the property, I can sell it as a business. I don't know whether their intention is to just have the approval of this board to do it until it's either, you're saying sold, could be, unfortunately, you guys walk outside and get run over by a bus. I don't know. Does that end it?
Mr. Chair. It does say in the staff recommendation on page 16 that the identifiable date of termination for this interim permit is the end of the business or the sale of the property. And I anticipated this would come up. And in this particular case, it seems like the most appropriate permit to issue, because if they sold the property, it doesn't make sense for an auto repair business to go with the land. You know, it's their business, so they might take it somewhere else. Or if they close the business, there's no purpose to have the permit go with the land because the business has been sold. They live on the land and presumably the business would go on elsewhere. But so in this particular case, interim permit makes a whole lot of sense. The permit going with the land in this case just didn't make sense.
To me, that's making the assumption that we know that they're not trying to establish a business that could continue to exist beyond them. Could be sold. They could, you're making assumptions that I don't know.
I'm making assumptions based on what I heard said, that what their intentions are. But if you
Ask them.
Kim?
Well, and I was almost thinking that
Sir, could
same.
you go to the podium? Thank you.
Got to give your name and address because we don't have a clue who you are.
Jeffrey Evenson, 36764 Cedar Ridge Drive, Winona. As far as like the being sold thing, it just popped into my head, like if I decide to sell it to my daughter or if I have a son to take it over, would that end it also? And would they have to redo it? I was just thinking that as you were saying sold, because in my mind, if I ever did sell it, it would be to my next, kids or so on and so forth. So.
And I'm just thinking of if I were the applicant and I was trying to establish something, I wouldn't want it to be at the mercy of, I'm going to get it, but it's temporary and it's going to eventually go away. I'd be trying to establish something that I could resell, sell to my family, sell to someone else. That's probably where I would be coming from. So I just, it's their application.
So if I could ask Assistant Attorney Nuttall, in this particular case, if they wanted to sell to your daughter, did you say?
Yeah.
How would that work with an interim permit?
My suggestion, if that is an actual possibility, would be to tweak the event finding and to say terminate upon the sale of business or sale of property to someone other than a family member. So that way it could be transferred within the family without an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, it just seems the way this was categorized has to do with it being a temporary small business. Most business plans go 5 years. They're not building any new structures. There's really, the infrastructure already exists for their purposes. I think it makes sense. I've been grappling with the interim conditional thing too, my entire tenure here, but when it comes to a business, that's not in perpetuity in my mind. It's not something that goes on and on and on and on and on without changing players and perhaps locations. But I like Attorney Nuttall's idea of putting in the clause about if it changes ownership outside of the family.
Is that a motion to amend?
Yes, I move to amend one of the 9 conditions, which would be
Number
Number
one.
1, the identifiable date of termination for this interim permit is the end of the business or sale of property to a non-family member.
Okay, we have a motion by Lynn. We have a second.
I'll second it.
Kelly seconded.
Yeah, that goes
Any other
first.
discussion? We have a motion and a second and another motion. So the first one we need to is on the amendment. Okay, the motion is to change the wording to read in the number 1 of the recommendations, the last sentence, the identifiable date of termination for this interim permit is the end of the business or sale of property to someone other than family or relatives. What's the best wording there?
What I have up on the screen would be this interim use permit will terminate upon the sale of the business or sale of the property other than to a family member unless amended, renewed through the conditional/interim use permit process.
There we go. Now we have a motion and a second to that effect. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, discussion, sorry.
I will support the motion. I want them to get their permit, no doubt about that. I come much more from a standpoint of property rights and what I would want to do with my own property. Personally, I would want the conditional use permit, and I would be pushing for that. I'm not limited to just being able to sell within my family, but if that's, I'm not hearing anything different, and that's what staff is recommending, so I'll support it, but it's probably not what I would do with my own property.
I will say, if they would have came up here and said, we're gonna stick 50,000 or 100,000 into this building, we are gonna put lifts, we are going to spend a lot of money in brick and mortar, and we are gonna concrete it out, and we are going to have this business here.
I don't think we're saying that they can't do that.
No, I'm not, but I'm just, if they would have came up front, then I would be on your thing saying, hey, wait a minute, they got a pile of money they stuck, and you're still gonna have enough money, don't get me wrong. But if they were starting over with building a building just for this and putting a lot of, I would feel a lot more your way, but I like what they're doing. They're taking what's there, they're making it work. So I'm not as apt to
And
holding your way as.
so I'm gonna ask the applicant, when you came in, were you advised whether you should apply for a conditional use permit or interim use permit? Or did you ask them, or did they tell you what you should be doing?
I just called and told them what I was doing, and this is what I was led to do.
You're moving forward with what the staff recommended to you.
Yes, it was strange for me when I saw interim, it is strange, but I mean, as long as in 5 years, we don't have to go through this, paying all the fees again, that's kind of the thing that wasn't interesting to us, because then what if it doesn't get approved or something happens? It was explained to me in 5 years, they're gonna come up, see how we're doing, make sure we're following the rules, which is fine by us. Maybe we do something that's not correct and they find it, good. That's just kind of the impression I was under. I did not understand the two different types of uses that we could get. I just went with the one that we have here today. So that was my impression.
The interim use permit is something relatively new. We used to be, you would, not very long ago, just a few years ago, you only had the option of a conditional use permit. It would run with the property, and once you have it, it's into perpetuity with the property. And so that's just been an issue that I've had with which is the appropriate application or appropriate permit to give.
So if I'm understanding correctly, let's say we own this company and it turns into this great company, we decide to pack up and sell, it would be on our benefit, correct? We're selling a business with our home, right? So that's kind of what you're defending on ours, is that how I'm understanding it?
If it was a conditional use permit, you could do that, but as an interim use, you won't be able to.
So the next people, if they wanted to keep it going, have to go through the process, reapply for everything and set up a business, correct? And go through the steps.
Right?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Jacob and to the petitioner as well. So I don't know that we need to assume in the future that all planning commissions and county boards are going to be evil entities that don't grant continuations of existing interim use permits either. In some cases, there are some industries in the county that have been granted conditional use permits that are issues as far as tire accumulations and not doing quite so well as I'm sure you folks will do. And so it might be kind of a nice way to just make sure that as a startup business that everybody's doing well, and should another interim use permit be required, or perhaps a conditional use permit at that time be appropriate. Most planning directors have the ability to waive fees as well, as do I. And so we're not looking as a staff to make anything punitive. We want people to succeed because economic development is also part of this department, and we love entrepreneurs.
Mr. Chair. I think it's somewhat unfair to assume that staff is guiding people in a particular direction, CUP versus IUP. And the reason I say that is that the normal citizen off the street that comes before the board really doesn't know the difference between, they don't even know CUP, IUP, they don't know what those words mean if they haven't been in planning. So they go there to the staff and they say, what do you think? And I don't think it's a case where they're guiding everyone towards IUPs because they want everything to be impermanent. I think they're, looking at each particular situation and saying, okay, what makes sense in this particular case? And I think in this case, they made the right call. And, in the case of selling the entire property, it's not this hasn't been a huge big deal to actually apply. If a buyer wanted to apply, they could apply and, achieve the same results. So.
Mr. Chair, just one quick point, and not to insinuate myself into the proceedings, of course, but to that point, today someone came to the counter that is likely to come with a petition to the Planning Commission in January. And I spent a half an hour explaining the difference between an interim use permit and a conditional use permit for their fledgling business potential, and gave them the paperwork, showed them some spots in the zoning ordinance to look at it, to talk to each other. It was a couple about what would be appropriate for them and their future use of the property before coming back with it filled out as to their preference. So we do try to listen to what people are asking for. So that was just a quick example from today. Thank you.
All righty. Louis.
Well, if you turn around, you take an investment in a business, there is two ways to look at it. You can turn around and sit there, and these people would turn around with interim. That means they have a business, but yet it's not as valuable if you could sell everything to go situation. And some of these people may not be explained exactly what you're at. If you have the conditional permit, you have a full set of business right there. There's no hardware or rigmarole or going down to planning and zoning. The business would be able to function, and it'd have more value selling that way than with having to get a conditional permit to do it. Am I getting this right?
Mr. Chair, I just want to comment. We talk about selling a business, but there's two ways to sell a business. In this case, they might have built their business over whatever time they're doing this. So you sell your book of business, you sell your clients, you sell your revenue, not necessarily the physical property. In this case, I'm torn with the interim versus the conditional, and I understand going both ways. But I think they're trying to make a good use of an existing building that can fit into their lifestyle business plan, and they own the property next to it. That's where they live. But to just carve out 0.8 acres that has no sewer, no drain, many limitations, I'm in favor of it because they've addressed the storage of chemicals, storage of tires, parking, and all of the associated things with running a mechanics business, automotive or whatever. I saw John Deere there, so I think engines, whatever. So at one point, I hope they're highly successful, and if it's more permanent, 5 years from now, maybe that's a discussion. Is this going to be a conditional use? I'm with Commissioner Jacobs, so I don't want to see them go through another application, its fees, costs, and so forth. Because if that's where you live, you put your heart and soul in it. Who wants the ticking thing at 5 years? Because now that I am where I am in life, 5 years goes pretty fast. So just my thoughts on it. I can handle the interim, I can handle the book of business, but to build a business of resale value on 0.8 acres without these other resources available is going to be very difficult. Just my thoughts on it.
Anybody else have any discussion before we vote? Patrick?
On the screen here, number 3, just for past practice or current practice, in a situation like this with, a business and potential for contamination, not saying it's going to happen, just throwing it out there. What is the protocol as far as visiting a business? Is it unannounced or announced, or how does it usually go? Okay.
Mr. Chair, and Planning Commission member Byron.
Business.
So oftentimes there's a complaint. Tires are out, they're not in the trailer, they're accumulating water, encephalitis mosquitoes. So that's one way. When we have our new OpenGov permitting system, it's going to allow us to do a little bit better job of scheduling inspections when somebody's going out at a certain point in the county, to add in some that are on a list that are up for inspection. And so then the goal would be make a few phone calls, say we're coming. We don't swoop in on people all that often unless we're really like trying to jam things out, and that's happened a couple times. But actually we are certainly able to do that, but that's not our goal. Our goal is to make it orderly so people can be aware that we're coming. But oftentimes a complaint gets to our office before that if something isn't quite right, and it's usually a neighbor.
Okay. I think I guess we're coming from the karst positions here. It's not really close, but just a clarification on that. What the possibilities might be. So thank you.
Any other questions about? Try to keep it to the motion and the second. If not, there is a motion on the table. You want to read it, Stephanie? An amendment to the motion.
The motion would be to amend the findings of fact to read: the interim use permit will terminate upon the sale of the business or sale of the property other than to a family member.
Thank you. That is the motion. All in favor say aye.
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 Oppose? It passed. Now we have the main motion. Any discussion on the main motion? We have a hand there.
Mr. Chair, I did get some information from Megan. She indicated there was a Scrivener's error in the zoning ordinance number right here on the screen. So it would be the petition for the following interim use permit. The chapter number is incorrect. So I'll be, with your permission, I will correct it to 10.4.6 paren 40.
All right, with that correction, is there any discussion? Because there's a motion and a second to approve the recommendation. No discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passed. So that's passed. Your next step is county board meeting on December 14th at 7 p.m. That's your next hurdle you have to go to and jump through. Good luck. And I'm glad they said up to 10 cars because I know several mechanics, and if you've been a mechanic for a while, you always get these people with a car that, yeah, it needs a head gasket. Okay. And then you get in there and it's like, nope, it needs about 3 times the cost. And it's like, ugh, you gotta park it for a month until I can save up
Is
the
it
money.
limited to vehicles? Can you work on tractors? Or you do not work on tractors?
Our own. I don't prefer to work on our own tractors and stuff that we tinker with.
Automotive is the intent.
Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item up for discussion is docket number PC 11-18-2102 to consider the petition of Jared Biggerstaff in regard to his land. And we would like Eric. Are you around, Eric?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Wait,
you're
yeah.
loud.
Too loud.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, well, this is getting loaded. This is a slightly different request. This is asking for a pair of zoning amendments. It's specific to a specific property, but we are changing 2 official documents. We'd be changing the zoning district map, and we'd be changing the county comprehensive land use map. That's the pair, what the applicant is requesting in order to move forward with the property to use it in the manner that they wish. Let's see. Is the packet loaded? Okay, looks like. Okay. Again, first slide with this petition, again, is mentioning 2 steps. And this is different than a conditional use permit in that it requires a public hearing both at the planning commission level, and it will require a public hearing at the county board level. This is the first step for the applicant to do that. It's essentially an 8-acre parcel, and we'd be changing it from rural residential service, the RRS classification, back to agricultural natural resource. And also the zoning map, we'd be reverting the I district that it currently is zoned back to the agricultural resource conservation district. This action is consistent with chapters 5.4 and 10 of the zoning ordinance. The next slide shows the zoning district for the area. We're keying in on the purple shaded district. That is the applicant's parcel. Again, it's approximately 8 acres. It's slightly larger on that GIS map as it shows that there's considerable road right of way along 248 in which the applicant would not have any control of for development purposes. So you can kind of see that white jagged line in the northern portion of that. That's actually road right of way of 248. The legend on the right shows the individual zoning districts. It's in section 3, located south of along Highway 248. The property is roughly located in between the city of Rolling Stone and the city of Minnesota City. Rolling Stone is to the west and Minnesota City would be located to the east. Important to note that the surrounding area is entirely made up of agriculturally zoned properties. You see some brown shaded parcels kind of to the northeast. That's just essentially rural heritage, indicative of houses that were built on steeper slopes, but for all practical purposes, it's the ag district in that vicinity. The next slide is showing, sorry, kind of for the detail, but this is showing the comprehensive land use classification map. And we've kind of circled that little blue corridor, which shows that that's just the applicant's parcel and that it's currently classified as rural residential service. And again, important to note the areas of green that it's completely surrounded. The red areas are the urban expansion area. When we did the composite scoring for lands, those red areas would be actually the highest areas in the county where you would entertain development, whether it be residential or other. In case of the urban expansion area, that is where the land and the attributes would lend itself to higher development potential due to the being close to municipalities. It may be a case that those areas could be developed for municipal city sewer and city water if everything lined up, for the proposer with the project. Next couple of slides are just some brief pictures that I took earlier in the week. The one on the left is just viewing from the driveway. They've added some crushed rock. They've widened the existing driveway access to the property. The existing driveway currently serves a residential property located to the west. I believe it looks from what it looks like to me is that that widened driveway then would serve both properties. The applicant has been in contact with MnDOT on any driveway access permitting that you'd have to secure from MnDOT, for any type of improvements on that. The next couple of pictures, this is important to note that these two are showing now lower into the property, so that you can see that there's a elevation change from the top of up there by Highway 248, and as you get down or more to the south into the property, you can see that there is a steeper embankment. The applicant has been cleaning up the property and removing a lot of the weedy wood vegetation, as well as a lot of the construction and metal and other material debris that was acquired with the property when he got it earlier this year. Next slide. Quick project overview. The intent of this applicant is to receive appropriate zoning in which they can follow through with an application for a new house and accessory structures. Currently, the I district is very limited. It hinders the applicant from actually even building a house on it because of that current I district. There is provisions for like mobile homes for workers and things like that in an I district, but it's not compatible with his master plan of what he'd like to do with this acreage. As pointed out in the staff report, and you'll see in some of the additional mapping exhibits, as you get down south deeper into that 8 acres, you have a stream corridor. It is public waters, there's floodplain, there's shoreland, there's wetlands. So there's a distinct advantage for constructing close to 248 as just meeting the setback and being on the higher elevation to do that. Also, there does not appear to be any feedlots of any considerable size, and therefore 1,000-foot setbacks from it seem to be met. Next series of maps are GIS maps that kind of show some of these features. This is a LiDAR. The yellow lines are showing roughly changes in 10 feet of elevation. The red arrow is showing approximately where the house site would be, and you can see where it's kind of narrowed in the northern part, and then it drops in considerable elevation. The higher ground up by the road is roughly 35 feet higher in the stream corridor as you get south into the property. Next couple maps are the current floodplain. That's the FEMA map, the one on the right that shows what a zone A or 1% flood is currently enforced. You can see that notched area to the north is accounting for the elevation. A little detail map on the left is showing public waters inventory for DNR shoreland, and it shows that portion of Rolling Stone Creek, 300 feet to that building within 300 feet, we get into some of the shoreland requirements like setbacks and things to that nature. But from all accounts, it looks like the applicant's house would be over 500 feet away from that. The next floodplain map is what the proposed flood elevation map will look like for the property. In this case, it's got the cross sections on it too. So with the new study, with LIDAR and the new watershed data that they've calculated, this is showing roughly the 100-year flood elevation points, and then it shades out to pink on where that hits as far as the topography goes. Got a brief video. I can just kind of narrate that. This video starts out in the lower, kind of not about halfway on the driveway. So we're kind of looking now to the southeast. Again, the applicant has been working to clean out a lot of the undesirable trees and vegetation, and has done considerable work to make the site more amenable to his home site plans. This is looking back up to the driveway, looking to the north. And this kind of shows the shelf and kind of the elevation change. You can barely see Rolling Stone Creek there in the far upper right. I'm just kind of showing the map and looking back. Again, this is the comprehensive land use classification map. This would be the zoning map. Again, showing the purple, what's currently zoned I. Parcel number. I guess staff apologizes for the choppiness of these videos. It seems like when we load it into these systems, it's not seamless like it is in the field. So, but I think in this case, it was worth showing, I think, kind of just the nature of the land and how it's currently zoned I, and it shows kind of the floodplain. It just shows that there's inherently difficulties with a property during an I district with this type of parcel, and it would probably be best suited to an agricultural zoning, and the limited agricultural uses, and having a homestead would probably be the highest and best use for it. The last bit, I know I'm coming up closer to the road, up to Highway 248, and the applicant has been doing some grading and putting in some crushed rock, and has been working with the platform in which I believe the new house would be located. There's a couple of stakes that you see in the viewer. And this would be the adjacent property to the west, in which looks like be sharing a driveway access to. A view looking back to the driveway as you go this into the south of the property. Okay, next slide. We received confirmation that the applicant did meet with Rolling Stone Township in October, and they've indicated support in regards to these requests. No additional written comments or formal comments have been received by any of the city officials or any of the neighbors, in which staff did a rather large notification. We will, since there is another public hearing, no matter what happens tonight, we have to repeat that process for the county board meeting as well. Next slide. The conclusion project would add a home site. Site is not utilizing areas in cultivation or prime farmland, and the intended building site would also be located out of floodplain as well as shoreland, and essentially leaving any areas of wetland essentially idle. The recommendation of staff is to consider all the testimony and the materials before making findings for the criteria. And finally, staff has included recommended findings of fact for consideration for this requested rezoning and reclassification of this parcel. Some different criteria, I guess, as you'll see in the staff report, there's kind of a different set of parameters, and either the planning commission or county board takes action on these type of requests. Final slide, I think, is thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'll do the best to answer them.
Does anyone have any questions for Eric?
Yeah, Eric, just one. I see there's a large setback on that 248, but you've looked, there's definitely a building envelope for that applicant by the time he meets the setbacks from the road right of way and the slopes that would be going down to the lowland. You see this being worth our time, because you definitely do see a building envelope for that applicant.
I do. The setback is 130 feet from the center line. There's two, if somebody's going to be building something off of 248, I'd pose two questions. The setback's 130 feet, but in this case, there's actually an exaggerated right of way. So when a person submits a building application for us, we have to verify, first of all, that it's meeting 130 feet from the center line, and secondly, that it's at least off of the road right away, because in some cases, a person could be confused because they could meet, technically, in some cases, they could meet a setback, but still be on a portion that's road right away. And while we can't authorize anything to be built on a road right away, so I haven't measured where the right of way is other than looking at those maps, but those are the 2 points that we look at when the application starts to shape up as far as the footprint and the location and whatnot.
I know up near Rolling Stone that 248 right away is as wide a right away as I've ever seen. It's just,
yeah. State roads tend to be that way. There's no, when people call, say, what's the right of way? I'm like, whew, it varies. I mean, you have to look at where the markers are, because it's staggered, it fluctuates, it varies on curves. There's no set standard. I mean, it varies from wherever you are on the landscape a lot of times.
it varies on this parcel too.
Yeah. One point I did call Jared. It looked like he was online here as a participant, but I don't see him. Maybe he's joined us again, but
He's here.
oh yes, okay. He made it in, so okay. So that's good. If you have any questions, it sounds like the applicant's there then too, so.
Okay, anyone else have any questions?
Would he need to, is he gonna need any additional variances to go forward with building a house here?
No, if the setbacks are met and he's got adequate soil for a septic system and the reclassification rezoning is successfully completed by the county board, then we'd apply the permitted use sections of the ag district. And he could come in and apply for over-the-counter permits or administrative permits at that point in time.
Anyone else? Anyone else have any questions?
Well, no variance is needed, but building on less than 40?
It's a parcel of record.
Parcel record, yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
30 years or whatever. Any other questions? Hey, thank you, Eric.
Bet.
Okay. Petitioner, would you like to come up and speak? Tell us why you want to do it, why you want to do it. I don't know, answer questions, whatever it is. Gonna state your name and address, please.
I use my address I have now, I don't have one. My name is Jared Biggerstaff. My address is 25663 Highway 248. My reason for wanting to do this is wanting a place to call home and build a house and a place to store things inside, have a decent sized shop to put things inside. And I thought this property, when I knew it was available, I watched it my whole life. I grew up from it down the road my whole life. My mom's property is literally the next one towards Highway 61 from it. And I just saw some type of advantage with the property, being able to clean it up and do something with it. And it really doesn't make any sense for it to be in the I district where it's at. It makes more sense for it to be homesteaded, in my personal opinion, where it's at. And with it, I just want to build a house and have a shop to put things inside. And I feel like I've done a very excruciating amount of work cleaning it up this far. I mean, it's had a lot of overgrown vegetation on it, a lot of steel and machinery and things that were left from previous ownership, that it was kind of a dump site. It's taken thousands of dollars to clean that up and get rid of some of that. A lot of it was concrete, and as some of you probably well know, concrete is not very cheap to get rid of, but it is all gone and it is all cleaned up. So now I guess I'm just asking to rezone it to make it so I can build a house and live there and call it home. So if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them if anybody's got any.
Anyone have any questions for the petitioner? Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Mark.
All righty. Public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I know.
Lynn moves to open the public hearing. Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Kelly seconds it. Any discussion? If none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
The public hearing is now open for this petition. Is anyone here would like to come up and speak for or against the petition? If so, please step forward, state your name and address and what you'd like to say. Again, the question would say, is anybody out in?
Mr. Chair, no one else has joined the proceedings online either.
Okay. Not everyone at once. No. For the second time, if anyone wishes to speak for or against the petition, please step forward, state your name and address and what you'd like to say. For the third and final time, if anyone wishes to speak for or against the petition, please step forward, state your name and address and what you would like to say.
Motion to close the hearing. Second.
We have a motion by Mike and a second by Louis. Harley, to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Public hearing is closed. Okay, what are our wishes and wants and discussion or?
Well, I would move that we accept the findings of fact prepared by staff and recommend that the board approve the amendments to both the comprehensive land use map and the zoning district map.
Look at that.
Kelly made the motion and Mike seconded it. Discussion time. Patrick.
I'd just like to make a comment to Mr. Biggerstaff to take, applaud him for the initiative to improve that property. I'm sure that was a boatload of work and that type of thing, but Rolling Stone's a pretty cool area, so kudos to you for moving forward on that.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I just say in my 10 years on the board, we've never done a spot rezone like this that I'm aware of, but it's a good solution. It's good for Mr. Biggerstaff. It's good for our creating another building envelope and whatever potential taxes that's going to help the community with. So, and again, the work, I agree with you, Pat, the work that he's done to clean that property up, it's an improvement for the community as well. So it's easy to support it.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, that was, it was an overgrown, I still don't understand how it ever got spot zoned to begin with. There's about 1 acre of property there. The rest is all, you saw it, hill slope and swamp and floodplain. And so how did it ever get to where it was spot zoned to that?
Play like a grandfathering thing on an initial, probably previous to any zoning ordinances at all. I think we started in 1970 or somewhere around there. I'll bet this is.
You have an answer to that one?
I do. This was actually rezoned to industrial in 1973, according to the staff report and findings. So they actually changed it to this after the zoning. So we're simply fixing that scenario here.
Right, and because you could see on the map, it's the only spot around like that. It really didn't fit. So I'm glad it's being taken care of. Any other discussion? If not, we have a motion on the table to accept the findings of fact and pass it.
Second.
I know it's
already there.
Second, yep. She made the motion,
I
Mike
seconded
seconded. All in favor of passing this motion, say aye.
it.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, it passed. Okay, Jer, yeah. You have to go to the county board meeting on December 14th. It's a 7 p.m. meeting, and you have to have another public hearing. Just for your trouble, for being such a good guy and.
Well, I apologize for being late tonight, but I was out doing a toll for the city, so.
You were right on time. Your timing was impeccable.
Yeah.
Came right at the proper time.
I was on the phone through the whole time before.
All righty. Jordan,
Oh,
Board of Adjustment.
yes. We voted on, we approved a variance today. Anyway, it was Can you remind me what we voted on? Yeah, that's what I'm feeling right now too.
Your time, right?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Setbacks from 2 roads
Oh,
on a
yes.
very narrow parcel.
County Road 12, in I-90, there were setbacks on both sides. And they were overlapping and the guy just wanted to put a shed there. And he had nowhere else to go, so we approved that. That's all we have.
Alright, okay. And you want to talk about your future one?
Which one?
No?
Oh, no, I
Talk
don't
about
think I'm
future one?
allowed to.
Okay. Well, I just, okay.
Report.
Report, past ones. County Board, Energy.
Yeah, County Board approved the Bolstead application from our last meeting. And then the only other thing is I'm wondering about our question for staff, our discussion last time about the prime soils exemption. Are we working towards getting that on an agenda, or where are we at with that?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Jacob, the County Board's solar working session is ahead of it, and a couple of other items. So I might ask for some guidance in reordering depending on the priority, but it will not be before February. So we'll continue working diligently. We don't forget about anything, but we also have a couple of things, possibly, if I'm reading my notes correctly, nuisance might be ahead, but solar for sure. So we'll move directly on it as soon as practicable. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think it's an urgency. I just wanted to make sure that it is moving forward. I don't have anything else. Unless anyone has any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
I had one other thing I wanted to add. I've been going to a lot of town board meetings lately, and there have been some issues coming up with county things and complaints, and it seems like most people aren't aware of the confidential complaint forms, or even the fact that they could confidentially make a complaint. I think it would be nice if we had those forms available at the town halls or at the meetings, because even some of the township officers were not aware that that form even existed.
Be a form you get from the county then?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I know this isn't an agenda item, and if you're just having an informal discussion, I might be able to give you at least some ideas of some future things that are happening. So there's going to be, on the county website itself, there's going to be an opportunity for people to sort of a click and fix kind of program, where if you see a spill or you see something that is amiss, or you've got a complaint at starting point. In addition to that, our OpenGov section that I was talking about earlier about permitting online, which isn't for everyone, we'll still have paper copies, but there's also going to be confidential complaints section for that, where somebody with more detail and wants to make sure that their information for their own safety and health doesn't get out. So the township clerks, the township officers will have an opportunity to use that as well. But then we can also take paper copies and enter it for the township officers or the township residents, should paper copies be desirable. So what I'm presuming is once we've got it up and clicking in probably February, that either at the township officers meeting, I can present kind of how that might work, but also good old paper still works for us too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Confidential complaints is getting into a very bad situation of doing it because it violates the Constitution ability. You have the right to know your accused. I would be careful going down that line of confidential complaints. I think the ACL, American Civil Liberties Union Group, might have something to say about some of that.
Well, that's the legal thing.
The Minnesota Data Practices Act requires that the identity of complainants regarding land use issues remain confidential. That is in statute. The only time that the right to confront your accuser applies is at trial. So it's only if you end up in trial or in criminal proceedings that's where that would come into play. Just reporting something and having it investigated by the planning department doesn't necessarily rise to the level of those protections.
So I may disagree with you, but I would be careful going down that long line. We don't need secret police.
Well, it's empowering when there's no ramifications for the person making the accusation. You know, they're completely anonymous. There's no reason for them not to, you know, hopefully everything that the accusations they're bringing forward are true and accurate.
But I can tell you from our township point of view, we've already utilized it to the county. Nothing ever happens to it, but we certainly, specifically in our township, we have many places that have piles of vehicles in their yard. And it's been talked to the county many times, you know, and that's been kept a secret so that, you know, there's not ramifications against the people that are turning them in, but nothing ever happens to them.
I think that's what the nuisance ordinance that we're working on is.
But we already have a nuisance ordinance. It's 3 cars. They have 13 or 30 cars. Pick which spot you're talking about, and nothing ever happens. Been that way for years.
Mr. Chair, to Commissioner Jacobs' point, we're not taking any anonymous complaints. The identities are protected, but they are not anonymous. We're not going to chase our tails all over the place with anonymous complaints. So just wanted to make that differentiation. Also in regard to running, it's not running a junkyard, it's salvage, the 3 or more vehicles. We do actually have one of the properties that has gone up the food chain into court. The current staff shortage cannot support more than one project at a time. We have a pretty long list and we are behind. So apologies, Mr. Chair, and to the township, as well as the Planning Commission, but we are attempting to go at these various languishing projects, some of which have lasted 12 or 13 years. I've only been here 4 3/4, so give me a little bit of time, but we will continue to work on them because we know it's important to the townships. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything to bring forth at this meeting? Or if not, looking for a motion to adjourn?
So
Moved.
Second.
I missed that one.
whoever wants to take the credit.
Everybody said it at the same time, I think. So half of them called it and half of them seconded it.
It's that anonymous stuff.
Yeah, it's anonymous. No discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting adjourned.